The red dust of Kepler 442b swirled around Elena Vasquez as she knelt beside the strange crystalline formation. Her scanner beeped softly, recording data about the alien mineral structure. The distant binary suns cast long shadows across the barren landscape, painting everything in shades of orange and crimson. Elena had been on this world for 3 weeks now, cataloging its unique geology and searching for signs of past life. She was alone, which was how she preferred to work. The research station was 20 kilometers away, but Elena felt safer out here in the wilderness than she did around most people. Years in the military had taught her to trust her instincts, and right now those instincts were telling her something was wrong. The air felt different. Too still. Too quiet. Elena stood slowly, her hand moving instinctively toward the plasma pistol on her hip. She had been a soldier before she became a scientist, and old habits died hard. Her dark eyes scanned the horizon, looking for anything out of place. The twin suns were setting, turning the sky into a canvas of purple and gold. That was when she saw them. 3 ships descended from the upper atmosphere like predatory birds. They were sleek and angular, made of some dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Elena had never seen ships like these before, but she knew immediately that they were not human. The design was too alien, too perfect in its cold efficiency. She ran. Her boots pounded against the rocky ground as she sprinted toward a cluster of boulder formations. Behind her, she could hear the ships landing with barely a whisper of sound. Whatever technology they used, it was far beyond anything humans possessed. Elena ducked behind a massive rock and pulled out her emergency beacon. She pressed the activation button and waited for the confirming beep that would tell her the distress signal was broadcasting. Nothing happened. She tried again, checking the device carefully. The beacon was functioning perfectly, but somehow the signal was not getting through. Something was jamming all communications in the area. Elena cursed under her breath and drew her plasma pistol. If she was going to die on this alien world, she would at least make it expensive for whoever was hunting her. Footsteps approached her hiding spot. They were too light to be human, with an odd rhythm that suggested the creatures making them did not walk like humans did. Elena held her breath and waited. Through a gap in the rocks, she caught her first glimpse of her pursuers. They were tall and thin, almost skeletal in their build. Their skin was pale gray and seemed to shimmer slightly in the fading light. They had 4 arms instead of 2, and their faces were elongated with large, dark eyes that reflected the dying sunlight like mirrors. They moved with perfect coordination, like parts of a single organism rather than individual beings. Elena counted 6 of them spreading out in a search pattern. They carried weapons that looked like curved metal rods, glowing with soft blue energy. She had no idea what those weapons could do, but she was certain she did not want to find out. One of the aliens stopped and tilted its head in her direction. Elena realized with growing horror that it had detected her somehow. Maybe it could smell her or hear her heartbeat or sense the heat of her body. It did not matter. Her hiding spot had been compromised. The alien raised its weapon and spoke in a voice like wind chimes mixed with static. Elena could not understand the words, but the meaning was clear enough. It was telling her to surrender. Instead, she rolled out from behind the rock and fired 3 quick shots from her plasma pistol. The bright energy bolts lit up the twilight as they streaked toward her target. The first shot went wide. The second was somehow deflected by a shimmering barrier around the alien. And the third was absorbed completely by its weapon. The alien that had spotted her raised its rod-like weapon and fired back. A wave of blue energy washed over Elena, and suddenly she could not move. Her muscles locked in place as if they had been turned to stone. She toppled backwards, still conscious but completely paralyzed. The plasma pistol fell from her frozen fingers and clattered against the rocks. The 6 aliens approached her slowly, speaking to each other in their strange musical language. Elena could only lie there and watch as they examined her like she was some kind of interesting specimen. One of them produced a device that looked like a metallic spider and placed it on her forehead. Immediately, Elena felt a cold presence pushing into her mind. Images flashed through her consciousness. She saw herself through the aliens' eyes, saw how they perceived her as a primitive creature from a backward species. She felt their curiosity about human physiology and psychology. Most disturbing of all, she sensed their excitement about the opportunity to study a living human under controlled conditions. The mental probe withdrew, leaving Elena feeling violated and nauseated. The paralysis was beginning to wear off, but before she could move, one of the aliens pressed another device against her neck. She felt a sharp pain, and then darkness closed in around her. When Elena woke up, she was no longer on Kepler-442b. She found herself lying on a hard metal surface in a room that hurt to look at. The walls seemed to shift and flow like liquid. Mercury and the lighting came from everywhere and nowhere at once. The air tasted of ozone and something else she could not identify. Something that made her skin crawl. Elena sat up slowly, fighting off a wave of dizziness. She was still wearing her field clothes, but her equipment was gone. No weapons, no tools, no communication devices. Even her boots had been removed, leaving her barefoot on the cold metal floor. The room was approximately 3 meters square, with no visible doors or windows. The ceiling was high enough that Elena could stand comfortably, but low enough to feel oppressive. Everything was designed to make her feel small and helpless. She was not surprised when a section of the wall simply melted away to reveal 3 of the gray aliens. They were taller than she had realized, nearly 2.5 meters in height. Up close, she could see that their skin was not actually gray, but a very pale blue-white, covered in fine scales that caught the light. Their forearms moved independently of each other, giving them an unsettling insect-like quality. The center alien spoke, and this time Elena could understand the words. Either they had learned her language from the mental probe, or they had some kind of translation technology. "You are Dr. Elena Vasquez, xenobiologist and former military interrogation specialist?" the alien said in a voice like breaking glass. "I am Kethver, commander of this vessel. You have been selected for study." Elena stood up slowly, keeping her hands visible and her posture non-threatening. She had been captured before, during her military service, and she knew that the first few minutes of contact were crucial. How she presented herself now would determine how her captors treated her later. "Study of what?" she asked, proud that her voice remained steady. "Human resistance to persuasion techniques," Kethver replied. "Your species has a reputation for stubbornness that we find intriguing. We wish to understand the limits of human endurance." Elena felt ice form in her stomach. She knew exactly what that meant. These aliens wanted to torture her, to see how much pain and psychological pressure a human could withstand before breaking. They thought they were dealing with just another primitive species that could be easily broken and controlled. They had no idea what they had gotten themselves into. "I see," Elena said calmly. "And what makes you think I'll cooperate with your study?" Kethver made a sound that might have been laughter. "Cooperation is not required, Dr. Vasquez, only participation." The chamber they brought Elena to was clearly designed for torture. She recognized the setup immediately from her military training. The room was circular with a single chair in the center, surrounded by various alien devices that hummed with malevolent energy. The walls were covered in monitors and control panels, while overhead hung mechanical arms equipped with instruments she could not identify but definitely did not want to experience. Kethver gestured for Elena to sit in the chair. When she hesitated, 2 other aliens moved forward with their blue glowing weapons raised. Elena shrugged and sat down. Metal restraints immediately closed around her wrists and ankles, but they were loose enough that she could still move slightly. These aliens wanted her conscious and responsive, not completely immobilized. "We will begin with basic psychological pressure," Kethver announced, moving to one of the control panels. "Our methods have proven effective on 17 different species across the galaxy. No creature has lasted more than 6 rotations before complete mental breakdown." Elena looked around the chamber with professional interest. 6 rotations? Is that about 6 of your days? That seems pretty short for a proper interrogation. What's your typical approach? Kethver paused, clearly not expecting questions from his subject. We employ a combination of sensory deprivation, neural feedback amplification, and targeted psychological manipulation based on species-specific fear responses. Ah, the classic approach, Elena nodded approvingly. Sensory dep is always a good starting point. Really messes with people's sense of time and reality. Though I have to ask, do you calibrate your neural feedback for different nervous system types? Because what works on, say, a silicon-based life form is going to be completely wrong for carbon-based mammals like me. The three aliens exchanged glances. Elena could see confusion in their large dark eyes. This was clearly not how their torture sessions usually began. You seem remarkably calm for someone in your position, observed one of the other aliens, a shorter one with more pronounced scales. Well, I've been in this position before, Elena replied matter-of-factly. Captured by hostile forces, I mean. It's actually kind of interesting to see how different species approach interrogation. You guys have a nice setup here. Very clean. Very organized. I appreciate that you're not going for the whole dirty dungeon aesthetic. Shows you take your work seriously. Kethver activated one of his devices. The lights in the chamber began to strobe at irregular intervals while a low-frequency hum filled the air. Elena felt the sound vibrating in her bones, designed to create discomfort and disorientation. At the same time, the temperature began to fluctuate rapidly between hot and cold. Elena endured this for several minutes, then sighed. Okay, I can see what you're going for here, but you're making some basic mistakes. First, that strobe frequency is all wrong for human eyes. You want something between 8 and 12 hertz to really mess with our brainwaves. What you're using is actually kind of soothing in a weird way. Impossible, Kethver said, but his voice carried a note of uncertainty. And the temperature thing, Elena continued, you're changing it too fast. The human body adapts pretty quickly to temperature shifts. You want to find our comfortable range first, then push us just outside it and hold us there. Make us almost comfortable, but not quite. That's much more psychologically disturbing than this roller coaster you've got going. The strobing stopped. Kethver stared at her with those mirror-like eyes. You are attempting to manipulate us into believing your species is immune to our techniques, Elena laughed, a genuine sound of amusement. Immune? Oh no, definitely not immune. Humans can be broken just like anyone else. It just takes the right approach. Your methods are basically sound, but you're using them like a blunt instrument when you need a scalpel. Explain, Kethver demanded. Well, take your sensory deprivation idea. Good concept, but you're doing it wrong. Humans are social creatures. Complete isolation isn't as effective as partial isolation. You want to give me just enough human contact to remind me what I'm missing, then take it away again. Complete deprivation just makes us adapt and go inward. Elena shifted in her chair, getting more comfortable. And this whole intimidating torture chamber thing, it's actually counterproductive for humans. We're a species that responds to challenges with stubbornness. The more threatening you make this environment, the more I'm going to want to resist you just to prove I can. You'd get better results with a pleasant room and polite conversation. The shorter alien spoke up. Then why are you telling us this? If these methods would be more effective against your kind, why share this knowledge? Elena smiled. Because I'm curious to see if you're smart enough to use the information properly. Most species aren't. They get so attached to their traditional methods that they can't adapt even when someone hands them a better approach. Kethver moved to another control panel. We shall test your claims. Perhaps you are simply more resistant than typical humans. Maybe, Elena agreed. Though I should mention I'm probably not your best test subject for human norms. I used to be a military interrogation specialist before I became a scientist. I've been on both sides of this process. I know all the tricks because I used to use them myself. This revelation caused another exchange of looks between the aliens. Elena could practically see the wheels turning in their heads. They had thought they were studying a typical human, but instead they had captured someone with professional knowledge of torture and interrogation techniques. What methods did your military employ? Kethver asked, his scientific curiosity clearly. Overriding his caution, Elena settled back in her chair like she was giving a lecture. Oh, humans have developed some really sophisticated approaches over the centuries. We've had a lot of practice, unfortunately. We've fought so many wars against each other that we've gotten very good at breaking our own species. She paused, organizing her thoughts. The most effective human interrogation technique is actually rapport building. You establish a relationship with your subject, make them like you, make them want to please you. Then you slowly increase the psychological pressure while maintaining that relationship. The subject starts to feel guilty about disappointing you, about letting you down. It's much more powerful than simple fear. Fascinating, murmured the third alien, who had been silent until now. Continue. Then there's time distortion. Humans have a very strong sense of time, so disrupting that is extremely effective. You mix periods of intense activity with long stretches of boredom. You feed people at irregular intervals, turn lights on and off randomly, ask the same questions at different times. Eventually, they lose track of how long they've been held, and that uncertainty breaks down their mental defenses. Elena warmed to her subject, but the real key to breaking humans is understanding our psychology. We're pack animals with strong social bonds. We have concepts of honor, loyalty, and sacrifice that other species might not share. The best interrogators don't threaten the subject directly. They threaten the people the subject cares about. A human who will endure incredible pain to protect themselves will often break immediately if you convince them that their suffering is causing harm to their loved ones. The three aliens were hanging on her every word now. Elena could see that they were genuinely fascinated by what she was telling them. They probably thought of themselves as experts in torture and interrogation, but they were learning techniques they had never considered. Of course, Elena continued conversationally, the really advanced stuff involves understanding the specific psychology of your subject. Everyone has different pressure points, different fears, different motivations. A good interrogator doesn't use the same approach on everyone. They study their subject first, learn what makes them tick, then design a customized approach. Kethver leaned forward. And what would be an effective approach for you, Dr. Vasquez? Elena grinned. That's the million-credit question, isn't it? I mean, I could tell you, but where would be the fun in that? Besides, knowing the theory and applying it effectively are two very different things. Most interrogators fail because they think they understand their subject better than they actually do. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of alien machinery. Elena could see that she had given the three aliens a lot to think about. They had expected to break a primitive human with their standard techniques, but instead they had found themselves in an impromptu classroom, learning advanced interrogation theory from their intended victim. It was, Elena reflected, a pretty good start to what promised to be a very interesting experience. 3 days passed before Kethver returned to Elena's cell. During that time, she had been given adequate food and water, and her restraints had been removed. The aliens seemed to be treating her more like a guest than a prisoner, which told Elena that her strategy was working. They were beginning to see her as a valuable source of information rather than just a test subject. When the door melted away and Kethver entered, Elena could see excitement in his alien features. Behind him came 2 other aliens she had not seen before, along with the shorter one from the torture chamber. Dr. Vasquez, Kethver said, we have been discussing your insights about interrogation techniques. We would like you to demonstrate some of these human methods for us. Elena raised an eyebrow. Demonstrate on who? We have captured several specimens from different species during our recent expansion. They are currently resisting our standard approaches. We thought you might show us how human techniques could be more effective. This was exactly what Elena had been hoping for. The aliens wanted her to help them torture their other prisoners, which would give her access to information about their operations, their other captives, and most importantly, their security procedures. She tried to look reluctant. I don't know, she said slowly. Helping you torture other people. That's a pretty big step. I mean, sharing theoretical knowledge is one thing, but actually participating in interrogations? That's something else. Entirely, Kethvar's forearms gestured in what Elena was beginning to recognize as impatience. You said yourself that theory and practice are different things. We wish to see these techniques applied correctly. Elena appeared to consider this. What do I get out of it? I mean, what's my incentive to help you? Continued good treatment, the shorter alien said. Better food, more comfortable quarters, access to educational materials about our civilization, and if I refuse? Then we return to testing our original methods on you, Kethvar replied. Which, as you pointed out, may take some time but will eventually succeed. Elena nodded as if she was weighing her options. In reality, she was trying not to smile. The aliens thought they were manipulating her, but they were actually giving her exactly what she wanted. Access to their ship, their prisoners, and their operations. All right, she said finally, I'll help you. But I want to study your current subjects first. I need to understand their psychology before I can design effective approaches for each one. An hour later, Elena found herself in a different part of the ship, walking through corridors lined with holding cells. The aliens had given her a translation device so she could communicate with the prisoners, and a tablet computer to record her observations. 2 guards followed at a discreet distance, their weapons ready but not obviously threatening. The first prisoner was a large, furry creature that looked something like a cross between a bear and a lizard. According to the information Kethvar had provided, this was a Morthak warrior from the Andromeda frontier. The Morthaks were known for their physical strength and their tribal honor codes. Elena approached the cell and activated the translator. Hello, she said. My name is Elena. I'm human. The creature looked up at her with intelligent amber eyes. Another test subject for the gray ones? Something like that, Elena replied. What's your name? Gorth of the Ironclaw clan. I have told the gray ones nothing, and I will tell them nothing until I die. Elena nodded approvingly. That's the spirit. How long have you been here? 12 days. They have tried their mind machines and their pain devices. I laugh at their weakness. Elena made notes on her tablet while carefully observing the cell's security measures. The force field generator was mounted in the ceiling, and there was a single control panel next to the door. She also noticed that the guards were watching her but not listening closely to her conversations with the prisoners. She moved on to the next cell, which contained a creature that looked like a living crystal formation. This was apparently a silicoid from the Vega system, a species that communicated through harmonic vibrations. Elena spent several minutes learning how to make the right sounds to talk with it. The third prisoner was the most interesting. It was a Zephyrion, one of the same species as her captors. This one was smaller than the others Elena had seen, with darker scales and what appeared to be scars across its torso. A traitor to your own kind? Elena asked through the translator. A resistance fighter, the prisoner replied proudly. I am Vexstar of the Liberation Front. We fight against the collective's expansion and their treatment of other species. Elena glanced back at her guards, then leaned closer to the cell. How many of you are there? Enough, Vexstar replied. And growing every day. The collective's brutality creates more enemies than they can count. This was valuable intelligence. Elena filed it away and continued her survey of the prisoners. In total, there were 8 captives from 6 different species. Each one had been resisting the aliens' interrogation attempts for weeks or months. When she returned to Kethvar, Elena put on her best professional demeanor. I've completed my initial assessment. Each species will require a different approach, but I think I can get results from all of them. Excellent. When will you begin? Tomorrow. But I'll need some things first. A private room where I can conduct interviews without your people watching. The prisoners need to believe I'm on their side, at least initially. If they see me as just another one of your tools, the rapport-building techniques won't work. Kethvar considered this. Very well. But the sessions will be recorded and guards will be stationed outside. That's fine. Oh, and I'll need access to information about each prisoner's background. Family, friends, homeworlds, military service, that sort of thing. The more I know about them personally, the more effective I can be. Elena spent the rest of the day reviewing the intelligence files the aliens provided. The information was extensive and detailed, covering not just the prisoners but their entire species, their governments, their military capabilities, and their weaknesses. The aliens were essentially giving her a complete intelligence briefing. On 6 different civilizations, more importantly, she was learning about the Zephyrian collective itself. From the files and her conversations with Kethver, she was building a picture of their society. They were a rigid hierarchy based on scientific achievement and military conquest. They saw themselves as the most advanced species in the galaxy, destined to rule over all others. They had conquered dozens of worlds through a combination of superior technology and psychological warfare, but Elena was also noticing cracks in their facade. The existence of the resistance fighter Vexstar proved that not all Zephyrians supported the collective's expansion. The fact that they were having trouble breaking prisoners from other species suggested that their methods were not as effective as they claimed. And most tellingly, their eagerness to learn human techniques showed that they were not as confident in their abilities as they pretended to be. That evening, Elena sat in her improved quarters planning her next moves. The aliens thought they were using her to become better at torture and interrogation. What they did not realize was that she was using them to gather intelligence about their entire civilization. Every question she asked, every observation she made, every technique she demonstrated was being carefully chosen to reveal more about Zephyrian weaknesses. She was not just learning how to break their prisoners. She was learning how to break them. The neural implant hidden in her brainstem was still functioning, broadcasting everything she learned on encrypted frequencies that only human intelligence could decode. The aliens had scanned her for obvious technology, but the implant was bio-integrated and virtually undetectable. Everything she was discovering about Zephyrian psychology, their command structure, their military capabilities, and their fears was being transmitted to the human fleet, but Elena was beginning to realize that her mission could be even more important than simple intelligence gathering. If she played this right, she might be able to do more than just learn about the enemy. She might be able to turn the Zephyrians' own tactics against them and create a weapon that could destroy their empire from within. She smiled as she settled down to sleep. Tomorrow would bring new opportunities to teach her captors lessons they would never forget. Elena had been conducting interrogation demonstrations for 2 weeks when she decided it was time to make her move. She had learned everything she needed about Zephyrian psychology, their command structure, and their weaknesses. More importantly, she had gained the complete trust of Kethver and his team. They now saw her as an invaluable asset rather than a prisoner. That morning, she was sitting in the private interrogation room they had given her, reviewing her notes before the day's session. Kethver entered with his usual confident stride, followed by 2 other officers Elena had not seen before. These new aliens wore different insignia and carried themselves with the authority of high command. "Dr. Vasquez," Kethver said, "I would like you to meet Fleet Commander Zixtela and Intelligence Director Morgith. They have come to observe your techniques personally." Elena stood and nodded politely to the newcomers. Fleet Commander Zixtela was larger than the other Zephyrians Elena had met, with darker scales and more elaborate markings. Intelligence Director Morgith was smaller but moved with predatory grace that reminded Elena of a hunting cat. "Your methods have produced remarkable results," Zixtela said through the translator. "In 2 weeks, you have extracted more useful information from our subjects than we obtained in months of traditional approaches." This was true. Elena had carefully coached several of the prisoners to reveal specific pieces of information that would make her look effective while not actually compromising anything important. The Morthic warrior Gorth had provided details about his clan's hunting traditions. The Silicoid had shared information about crystal formation on its homeworld. None of it was militarily significant, but the Zephyrians did not know that. "Thank you," Elena replied. "I found that understanding the psychological makeup of each species is the key to effective interrogation." Morgith leaned forward with interest. "We are particularly impressed by your analysis of Zephyrian psychology. Your insights into our own species have been illuminating." Elena had been very careful about this part of her work. She had spent hours with the resistance fighter Vexstar, ostensibly trying to break him but actually learning about Zephyrian society from someone who opposed it. She had then presented this information to Kethver as insights she had gained through psychological analysis. Well, Elena said modestly, every species has certain universal psychological patterns. Even the most advanced civilizations have predictable responses to specific types of pressure. Demonstrate, Zixtala commanded. Elena had been expecting this request. Very well. But I should warn you, analyzing your own psychology might be uncomfortable. Are you sure you want to proceed? We are scientists, Morgeth said. We can handle objective analysis of our own species. Elena smiled and activated her tablet. All right, let's start with basic Zephyrian psychology. Your species is built around hierarchy and scientific achievement. You define yourselves by your position in the command structure and your contributions to collective knowledge. This creates several exploitable pressure points. She touched the tablet screen, bringing up a chart she had prepared. First, Zephyrians have an intense fear of being seen as inferior or primitive. You can tolerate physical pain much better than you can tolerate intellectual humiliation. A good interrogator would attack your sense of superiority rather than your body. The three aliens exchanged glances. Elena could see that her words were hitting home. Second, she continued, your rigid hierarchy makes you vulnerable to authority. Manipulation. You are conditioned to obey superior officers without question. A skilled interrogator could exploit this by impersonating a higher-ranking Zephyrian or by convincing you that cooperation serves the interests of your superiors. Interesting theory, Zixtala said, but Elena could hear uncertainty in the translator's interpretation of his voice. Third, and most importantly, your entire civilization is based on the belief that you are the most advanced species in the galaxy. This makes you psychologically dependent on maintaining that superiority. If you were ever convinced that another species was more advanced, more intelligent, or more sophisticated than you, it would cause a fundamental crisis of identity that could shatter your entire worldview. Elena paused and looked directly at each of the three aliens. That's actually the key to breaking any Zephyrian. You don't torture the body or even the mind. You attack the foundational belief that makes them who they are. Silence filled the room. Elena could practically hear the gears turning in the aliens' heads as they processed what she had told them. You seem to have given this considerable thought, Morgeth said finally. Professional habit, Elena replied. I've been analyzing the psychology of everyone I've met on this ship. It's what I was trained to do. And what have you concluded about us individually? Zixtala asked. Elena pretended to hesitate. You sure you want to know? Personal psychological analysis can be quite unsettling. Proceed. Well, Commander Zixtala, your classic military leadership personality. You maintain authority through competence and force of will, but you're actually deeply insecure about your position. You constantly worry that someone beneath you is going to prove themselves more capable and take your place. Zixtala's forearms tensed almost imperceptibly. Elena had hit a nerve. Morgeth, you're different. You're genuinely brilliant, and you know it. Your weakness is intellectual arrogance. You assume you're the smartest person in any room, which makes you vulnerable to manipulation by anyone who can make you feel intellectually superior. And Kethver, Elena turned to look at the alien who had been her primary contact, you're a true believer. You genuinely think the collective's mission is righteous and necessary. But that faith makes you vulnerable to evidence that contradicts your beliefs. If someone could prove to you that the collective was wrong about something fundamental, it would destroy your psychological foundation. The three aliens were staring at her now with expressions Elena could not quite read. She decided it was time to take the biggest risk of her mission. Of course, she said casually, I should mention that I've been broadcasting all of this information. For the past 3 weeks, the room erupted in motion. All three aliens reached for their weapons, but Elena held up her hands peacefully. Wait, she said calmly. Before you do anything rash, you should understand what's been happening here. You are a spy, Zixtala snarled, his weapon trained on Elena's chest. Obviously, Elena replied. Did you really think humans would send a xenobiologist to survey an empty planet without any backup plan? I've been transmitting everything I've learned about your species, your technology, your military capabilities, and your psychological weaknesses to the Human Intelligence Network. That is impossible, Morges said. We scanned you thoroughly. You carry no communication devices. Elena tapped her temple. Bio-integrated neural implant. Completely organic, virtually undetectable, and broadcasting on quantum frequencies you probably haven't even discovered yet. Every conversation we've had, every piece of information you've shared with me, every detail about your interrogation techniques and your prisoners has been transmitted to human command. Why are you telling us this? Kethver asked, and Elena could hear genuine confusion in his voice. Because the transmission isn't the real weapon, Elena said with a smile. The real weapon is what I've taught you about yourselves. You see, everything I've told you about Zephyrian psychology is absolutely accurate. And now that you know these things about yourselves, you can never unknow them. Elena stood up slowly, keeping her hands visible. You'll always wonder if your decisions are based on logic or just psychological programming. Every time you interact with a subordinate, you'll question whether you're really in control or just following ingrained patterns. Every time you face a challenge from another species, you'll wonder if they might actually be more advanced than you. You are attempting to manipulate us, Zixtala said, but his voice lacked conviction. I don't need to manipulate you anymore. Elena replied, I've already given you the tools to manipulate yourselves. That's the beauty of psychological warfare. Once you understand how your own mind works, you can never stop analyzing your own thoughts and motivations. It's like trying not to think about breathing once someone mentions it. Elena could see the realization dawning in their alien faces. By teaching them about their own psychology, she had created a weapon that would continue working long after she was gone. Every Zephyrian who learned about these psychological insights would become a little less certain, a little less confident, a little more prone to second-guessing themselves. But that's not even the best part, Elena continued. The best part is that I've been broadcasting all of this to every species in the galaxy. Right now, your former victims are learning exactly how your psychology works, how your society functions, and how to exploit your weaknesses. The information I've gathered isn't just going to humans. It's going to everyone. The three aliens stood frozen, finally understanding the full scope of what Elena had accomplished. She had not just gathered intelligence. She had created a psychological weapon that would spread throughout the galaxy, teaching every species how to resist Zephyrian domination. The silence in the interrogation room stretched for nearly a full minute as the three Zephyrians processed what Elena had told them. She could see the wheels turning in their alien minds, calculating the implications of her revelation. Finally, Fleet Commander Zixtala spoke. Kill her, he ordered. Kethver raised his weapon, but then hesitated. Elena could see the conflict in his posture. Everything she had said about his psychology was proving itself true in real time. He was questioning his orders, wondering if killing her was the right decision or just an emotional response. Wait, Morges said. Killing her now serves no purpose. The damage is already done. We need to understand the full scope of what she has accomplished. The full scope? Elena laughed. You still don't get it, do you? This isn't just about intelligence gathering. This is about changing the entire balance of power in the galaxy. She walked over to the wall display and activated it with her tablet. The screen showed a star map of the local sector, with dozens of systems marked in different colors. Let me explain what's been happening while you've been playing with your torture devices, Elena said. 3 weeks ago, when I was captured, exactly 17 species in this sector were under Zephyrian control. They obeyed you because they believed you were invincible. They thought your technology was superior. Your military was unstoppable and your psychology was incomprehensible. Elena touched the display, and several star systems changed from red to green. As of this morning, 6 of those species have declared independence from the collective. They're using the information I broadcast to target your psychological weaknesses, exploit your command structure vulnerabilities, and counter your intimidation tactics. Impossible, Zixtila said, but Elena could hear doubt creeping into his voice. Oh, it gets better, Elena continued. The Morthic clans have united for the first time in centuries. They're calling it the Great Hunt, and guess who they're hunting? Your frontier colonies are being hit by coordinated attacks that specifically target your species' fear of being seen as primitive. Elena changed the display to show military unit positions. Red markers representing Zephyrian forces were being surrounded by green markers from multiple species. The silicoids have shared your harmonic frequency analysis with every silicon-based species in 3 sectors. They've developed sonic weapons specifically designed to disrupt Zephyrian neural patterns. And the best part? They learned how to do it from the interrogation techniques you demonstrated on their representative. Morgith stepped closer to the display, studying the tactical situation. This cannot be accurate. Our intelligence networks would have detected coordinated resistance on this scale. Your intelligence networks are designed to detect military threats and technological developments, Elena replied. And they're not designed to detect psychological warfare. You never saw this coming because you never imagined that other species could understand you well enough to manipulate you. She touched the tablet again, and the display showed communication intercepts. Messages in dozens of different languages scrolled across the screen, but all of them contained references to Zephyrian psychological weaknesses. Every species in the galaxy is learning how to push your buttons, Elena explained. They know that challenging your intellectual superiority will make you act irrationally. They know that questioning your authority will cause command structure breakdowns. They know that proving themselves more advanced than you will trigger existential crisis responses. Kethver lowered his weapon slightly. But why? Why would your species care about liberating other worlds? What do humans gain from this? Elena turned to face him directly. That's the difference between humans and Zephyrians, Kethver. You only understand relationships based on domination and submission. You can't comprehend the idea that we might help other species simply because it's the right thing to do. Oh, she added with a smile, because a galaxy full of free species is much better for human trade and diplomacy than a galaxy ruled by a single empire that sees everyone else as inferior. The display chimed, and new information appeared on the screen. Elena glanced at it, and her smile widened. Oh, this is interesting. It looks like your resistance fighter Vexstar wasn't lying when he said the Liberation Front was growing. According to this intelligence update, approximately 30% of your own military forces have joined the rebellion. They're using the psychological profiles I developed to identify which officers are most likely to defect. Zixthala stepped forward angrily. You lie. Zephyrians do not betray the collective. Zephyrians who believe in the collective's mission don't betray it, Elena corrected. But Zephyrians who have learned to question their own motivations, who understand how their psychology has been manipulated by propaganda, who realize that their entire worldview might be based on false assumptions. Those Zephyrians make different choices. Elena activated another section of the display. Your own ships are reporting discipline problems, unauthorized communications with enemy forces, and refusal to carry out orders. The information I broadcast didn't just go to other species. It went to your own people, too. The room's communication system suddenly activated. A voice speaking in the Zephyrian language filled the air, and Elena could see all 3 officers stiffen in recognition. What is that? Elena asked. Ship-wide announcement, Morgith replied tersely. The captain is ordering all personnel to combat stations. Elena's tablet chimed with an incoming message. She glanced at it and nodded with satisfaction. Well, that was faster than I expected. Your fleet is under attack by a combined force of 7 different species. They're using coordinated psychological warfare tactics specifically designed to exploit Zephyrian command structure weaknesses. She showed them the tactical display. See, they're not trying to destroy your ships. They're broadcasting surrender offers tailored to different psychological profiles within your crew. Officers who value scientific advancement are being offered research positions. Officers who have family members are being offered safe passage to neutral worlds. Officers who join the military for honor rather than conquest are being offered the chance to switch sides and fight for liberation instead of oppression. The ship shuddered as weapons fire struck the hull. Emergency lights began flashing, and Elena could hear the sound of running feet in the corridors outside. "Your empire is collapsing," Elena said simply. "Not because of superior firepower or advanced technology, but because you can no longer trust your own people to follow orders without question. Once a hierarchical society starts questioning itself, it falls apart very quickly." Cuthbert was staring at the tactical display with growing horror. "How did you know this would happen?" "Because I studied your psychology," Elena replied. "I knew that once other species understood how your minds work, they would be able to turn your own. Tactics against you? Fear and intimidation only work when the victims don't understand the psychology behind them." The ship shuddered again, more violently this time. Through the communication system, Elena could hear voices arguing in the Zephyrian language. Some were giving orders, others were questioning those orders, and still others were openly refusing to comply. "The beauty of psychological warfare," Elena continued, "is that it's self-perpetuating. Every Zephyrian who learns about these insights becomes a little less effective as a soldier and officer. Every piece of propaganda you try to use gets analyzed and countered. Every intimidation tactic you employ gets turned back against you by people who understand exactly how it's supposed to work." Zixtela made a desperate gesture toward his weapon, but Morja stopped him. "No," the intelligence director said. "She's right. Killing her changes nothing now." "The damage is permanent," Elena nodded approvingly. "See? You're learning. That's exactly the kind of rational analysis that makes you different from the mindless conquest machines your propaganda portrays you as. Unfortunately for your empire, that same rational analysis is what's going to destroy it." The ship's lights flickered as another impact shook the vessel. Elena could hear explosions in the distance and the sound of atmosphere escaping through hull breaches. "I should probably mention," Elena said conversationally, "that my rescue is scheduled to arrive in about 10 minutes. The human fleet has been tracking my neural implant signal since I was captured. They've just been waiting for the psychological warfare campaign to weaken your defenses sufficiently." She looked around the room at the three aliens who had thought they were studying her when she was actually studying them. "You wanted to understand human endurance and resistance to torture," Elena said. "Well, now you understand. Humans don't just survive torture. We analyze it, improve it, and teach others how to resist it. We turn our own suffering into weapons against our oppressors." Elena walked toward the door, which had been left unlocked in the confusion of the attack. "The galaxy is about to become a very different place," she said as she paused in the doorway. "A place where species work together instead of being conquered. A place where knowledge is shared instead of hoarded. A place where psychology and understanding matter more than fear and intimidation." She looked back at the three Zephyrians one last time. "Thank you for the education. It's been very enlightening."